Welcome to this Pixotope tutorial. In this video, we'll take you through how to set up an AR scene using Pixotope Editor. When we refer to augmented reality, or AR, we're talking about placing digital objects into the real world. Pixotope provides a number of tools that help integrate these elements, producing visually impressive results. Using camera tracking, we can overlay graphics onto live video, anchoring them to the real-world environment, ensuring they remain correctly positioned and responsive to changes in perspective. By applying realistic lighting, shadows, and reflections, digital objects are effectively grounded, making them feel like they naturally belong in their surroundings. If you look at the video input on the right, you will see the real-world elements that make up our physical set. In the corner of our studio, we have a small and large box and a frame with a reflective material. I also have a light panel set up just out of shot. And on the left-hand side, we can see our digital elements that we've added to our set. We have our robot sat on the large box. Next to them on the floor is a sphere with an emissive material applied. In the foreground of the shot, on top of the smaller box, there's a translucent sphere. And finally, on the wall, we have a virtual lamp. To help integrate these virtual objects with the real-world elements, I have set up a series of light, shadow, and reflection capture objects. I have added spotlights to match the real lighting in the studio, along with a rec light in the same position as the studio light. You'll also notice the real-world reference on the floor, which is used to accurately position everything in my scene relative to the studio. Let's take a closer look at the scene setup. When I set everything in the scene to foreground, you can see that I have recreated my real-world set in the editor. I can now convert these objects to capture light, shadows, and reflections from the digital elements in my scene. First, I'll set the walls. I'll select the planes, right-click and select Convert to AR Shadow Reflection and Light Capture, and choose to keep the original material. I'll do the same for the box the robot is sitting on. Next, I'll set the floor, only this time, rather than keeping the original material, I'll set it to the parquet material, as it better matches the characteristics of the studio floor. For the frame, I have a plane with a semi-reflective material applied. I'll also convert this plane to an AR shadow reflection and light capture and choose to keep the original material. And finally, I want the robot to appear behind the small box in the foreground. To achieve this, I have a cuboid matching the dimensions and position of the box relative to the studio 0 point. I'll convert this object to be an AR holdout. And now you can see the objects in my scene cast shadows onto the surfaces, just as if they were actually in the studio. Moving a point light around the scene makes the effect even more prominent. By default, a light added to the level will not light up the AR shadow reflection and light catchers. In order to do that, we need to turn on Enable Light Catcher in the Pixotope World settings. Then, in each light settings, ensure you turn on Light Up Video. You can adjust the intensity, color, and temperature of the lighting to match the real-world environment, helping the digital elements integrate naturally into your set. If I add a sphere and apply a glass-like material to it, you'll notice that by default, it does not look correct. This is because it is currently set as a foreground element. To achieve specific compositing effects, objects need to be rendered differently within our compositing pipeline. Setting the sphere to be a translucent object tells the editor that it needs it to render the sphere with translucency and possible refraction in front of the video input. You may also notice that the sphere is reflecting parts of the studio that are not in shot. This is achieved by creating a cube map of the studio and applying it to the material. Also, by adding logic in the material to rotate the cube map, you can properly align the reflections for the sphere. You can fine-tune your scene through Pixotope Director. Here are some examples that are useful for AR productions. You can fade the graphics in and out. Adjust the global intensity of the virtual shadows. Set a maximum intensity for shadows, which can be useful to simulate ambient light. You can also adjust the shadow settings for each individual light in your scene. And there are controls for reflections. Here you can adjust the reflection strength and transparency. For more information on this or any other Pixotope subject, please visit the Pixotope Help Center, link in the description.